Hey, welcome to episode 6 of the Follow podcast, where the friendships are real, the opinions are our own, and we could be wrong.
That's an intro.
I think I'm on the wrong podcast.
Yeah, you might be. Hey, welcome to episode 6 of our podcast, Follow, where we are walking through these 90 days of Jesus, where we are looking at his, the Gospels and all of his interactions, miracles, teachings, and we are trying to kind of get a clearer picture of who Jesus is as it relates to discipleship so that we can live that out daily, weekly, in all parts of our lives. So I am with Glenn as always, and my good friend Augusto Aniano.
Hey.
We got the Latin influence with us.
There you go.
We love it. So this afternoon we're looking at some readings here that, again, I think I've said this before, there's a lot going on in Jesus' world as we take all these readings at one point. So we start with sort of our normal question. What popped off the page to you? What became real? What piqued your interest?
Gusto, you
Me?
Yeah, sure.
Well, the first thing I want to say is I forgot my notes.
No, that's unfortunate.
But
Augusto also produces behind the scenes.
Right.
so
I'm always on
he
the
was
other
getting things
side.
ready.
I could change the camera angles from here. But
Yeah.
No, what popped up for me was like this process of Jesus telling the story and them not getting it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like he was talking about something and people were like, what is he talking? Where is he gonna go? It's like this place that I am gonna go that you cannot come. Where is he going? Is he going to the diaspora? Is he gonna do something? And that was like, I could relate to that so much. My greatest concern is like, would I be one of those? It's like, am I so missing the point here? Or am I trying to push something that is like not what Jesus wants? So for me, that was like, oh shoot, like this group of like religious authorities are not getting it like by a mile. And my question was like, oh, am I like them? Am I in the same boat?
As a host, I feel it's my responsibility to tell people that diaspora is a highly theological term, and what it means is the scattered believers of Jesus Christ throughout the region. Right. He's given this information to not only religious leaders and the common people in the area Jesus has been in, but people speculate maybe he's going to go to the Greeks and talk to them.
Yeah,
Right.
that was good. So for me, like my most common prayer, because I fill it out in my book, and the last question is prayer, has been, Lord, help me to get it. Lord, help me to not miss it.
Yeah.
So in fact, not to put you on the spot, but this might come up, Augusto. You know, one of the real valuable things about having you on this podcast is that you are not American in your roots. You're very American in many ways, but you know, because it's easy to miss things because we're only looking at it through a certain cultural lens.
Right.
And that's a worry I have.
Sometimes we have to explain Super Bowl terminology.
Oh,
to you at the end of the
no, let's
game.
not go there. Let's not go
But
there.
you see things differently, and we do really appreciate that viewpoint, because I think there's so many people that are outside of our normal way of looking at things that we want to be friendly and think through the way that they think through things.
Right. In that regard, one thing that also kind of popped up in my readings was this idea of Jesus not having a place to lay his head, and we see that and I mean, not to make a long story, but so many followers of Jesus in other parts of the world can relate to that in a personal way.
Very
Like
visceral way.
Yeah, when you decide, well, I'm gonna go to seminary, in developing countries is you're gonna live that lifestyle. I mean, it's like
Choosing
the beginning. I remember in our case it was like we literally didn't have much. It was like so it gives you a different perspective.
Glenn didn't either. You were like 21 and eating rice and beans, probably.
Yeah,
you and
we
Janny.
did. I mean, our seminary was very, lean times, but we had a place to lay our head.
Yeah,
Right,
There was
right.
not that. I mean, the American dream is a place to lay your head.
Right.
So, yes, but looking back at least on our experience, which again was still, a different level than probably most places in the world. We have great memories of living
Of course,
hand to mouth.
of
But,
course.
but
And-
it's still
and you
different than people that actually leave their town and go,
Right.
I see this when you go to Tanzania. They leave their village and they come and they're like at the mercy of the people there to take care of them.
And even in my experience in both in Uruguay and Mexico, then you go and see others that are actually living it that way, and you feel like, oh, my life is so easy, right?
Yeah.
When we went to the mountains in Puebla with mission trips, we would go from the city, all the comfort and stability of having like transportation, whatever. You never worry about like the rain covering the roads and you being stuck in a village without food and water. It's like, and that's their life, the reality, their everyday life. So it's like, it challenges you.
Yeah.
It challenges you.
Even verses come to life, that idea of leaving father and mother. You think of people
Right.
in Muslim countries
Let
where
them
following
bury their
Jesus
dead,
is
right.
literally
Yeah.
a decision to walk away from everything comfortable, safe, and known for an unknown life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
What about for you, Glenn? What popped off the page for you?
Yeah, I love what you were talking about there, Augusto. Something that popped out to me is kind of a similar deal on the people missing the point. And the one that just really kind of drove it all home to me was actually the very first reading of the week. I think it was from Matthew 18, where the disciples are arguing who's the greatest.
Oh, yeah.
And Jesus corrects them with childlike faith.
Yeah.
And so you begin to see like almost, it's not sides divided up, but you see like the adventures of people missing the point and those that are getting it. And I just wrote down, you have Pharisees' unbelief, you have Pharisees wanting to make everything about like these tight religious distinctions. Whose side are you on? Are you a child of Abraham? Or are you a child of Beelzebub? It's real high control, who's in, who's out. And Jesus contrasts that with acts of faith and choosing Jesus and faith where it's not about, they say, well, they cast out demons, but they're not from us. Jesus is like, hey, don't worry about
Yeah.
that. So they were defining things so rigidly, and Jesus seems to kind of push back on that. They're going to stone the woman caught in adultery, and Jesus is going to show grace and a new life. And so you have like these two camps, those that are really missing the point, like you said, and then those that are getting it. And I'm drawn to that.
It's highlighted by the religious system that they were in the day, right? These Pharisees and Sadducees who were in religious power, quote unquote, lived a very legalistic, ritualistic version of this faith. And Jesus really kind of flies in the face of that.
Yeah. And we do this too. Part of the thing about legalism and kind of religious approach is you like the high control of it. I can control who's in, who's out, what's right, what's wrong. Not to bring this up, you're the host. Go ahead.
Well, I just like knowing what's right. I'm a rules guy. Tell me the rules, I'll follow the
Right.
rules. Show me the work, I'll do the work. But really, this lifestyle that Jesus embraces is one that's very much more free flowing and engaging with the people that are around them and redirecting.
Yeah, we saw it. There's a real active cultural discussion of this right at this moment based on that He Gets Us commercial that they showed in the Super Bowl. And it was people washing the feet of all kinds of sinful different people. And so there's been a lot of discussion about, well, is it too, embracing sinners and white, not caring about sin, or it's that kind of discussion in Jesus's day.
Was it Jesus didn't teach hate?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Phrase. It's like he
Which
washed
everyone
feet.
agrees with, even on the other side, but then they get up in arms about,
Right.
the kind of people, like, oh, we're okay with washing the homeless feet. Oh, we're okay, but there's certain categories where, and the question is if Jesus ate with notorious sinners, what does that look like,
Right.
And to piggyback on that, there's one day I had my notes and I highlighted, and I had the reference. I think it was John 1 that came to mind when they say, go and read the scriptures. No prophet comes from Galilee.
right?
Yeah, right.
And I was like, nothing good can come out of
Galilee.
Nazareth,
Yeah,
right?
right, yeah.
John 1.
Yeah, right.
That's the same thing. It's like, no, there's no chance. This is a place that is not expected to bring anything good.
Yeah.
And there's no prophet from that region. It's like, this shouldn't be the way God operates. And I love that Jesus himself is an expression of that, like, outcast type of savior that is going to come not from where they expected him to come.
And even what they're doing there is they're trying to base it on Scripture. They're saying, we know the Bible so much that we know nobody could come from Galilee. Now they've missed it. They've missed the point. And so there's good intentioned people saying, oh, well, Jesus would never come near to sinners like that. And so I think it's alive and well in our world today. And for me, the biggest takeaway is I see these two categories: those that are defining it so tightly and missing Jesus, and this kind of air of grace and new life and service and humility and faith. And I want to align myself with that.
Right.
You know, and we'll
Yeah.
take our chances with that.
Yeah, there is one passage, I can't find it, or I don't know which one it was, where they said the Messiah, nobody will know where the Messiah comes from, which
Yeah.
is not biblical either, right? They had ideas, they knew from
Right.
prophecy where the Messiah would come from. The thing that stuck out to me was the John 8 passage. I sort of like those later days where we get into one big long passage where he goes.
Yeah, I enjoy that
Those were
too.
kinda nice.
It's like, oh, it's one passage.
And he
Yeah.
paints this picture of this, really, this outline of Abraham all the way down to where he's at, and they still don't get it, you know,
Right.
Yeah, or they push back on it so hard, and
Right.
Jesus ends
They're
up-
children of Abraham. They've never been slaves before.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're like, what are you talking about? You guys don't know at all your own history, and so they don't receive him. In fact, they go on to call him a demon because of the way he's reciting their own history. Now,
Right.
granted, Jesus is calling them out in that passage, I would say, in a lot of ways, and that's our normal response to being called out. But to go to the demon, you know, call out is pretty harsh.
Yeah.
And for me, it led to our next question, which is kind of that something difficult. This idea of demon possession is all throughout these passages this week, right? So many of Jesus's miracles have to do with demon possession. One of my daughter's favorite verses of all time is that, help me with my unbelief, the demon that's in this boy, and throwing him into the fire. And so how do you guys make sense of the demon stuff, maybe even from then on to now? Like, how do we process that demon possession thing today? Sorry, I know I'm throwing a left field at you guys,
that's
both
okay.
of you, yeah.
That's tough. I approach it with so much humility. I don't want to be that guy that's like, I know Jesus, but who are you?
Yeah, right.
Right? It's like, if I ever encounter a situation like that, I want to approach it with so much humility, and also the confidence that comes from the power of Jesus,
Yeah.
who gave us the authority
Yeah.
or that realm. But my approach is always like, oh gosh, we need to be so humble and so rooted in our faith and in the person and the work of Jesus to be the foundation for us to deal with those questions at a personal level. Like when you're like afraid of your clothes or you hear a story, it's like you get this
you wrestle.
yeah, you wrestle with that. It's like I want to be humble and close to the Lord, because there's peace in His presence, and that gives me the confidence to approach those scenarios. I remember one of our I was in Mexico, and the pastor, the lead pastor at that time, was asked to visit a person who of course in our context that's not very present, and we deal with it.
But that's
the
the question.
But right,
Right,
but
yeah,
it's like-
yeah, yeah.
But it is,
Yeah,
right? So
right.
so it wasn't a normal thing for us at all. Maybe some other manifestations of Christianity are more accustomed to that. But for us, it was like, oh crap, how to approach this? So we prayed, we fasted, and he went and dealt with it, and I didn't get to go and support. We were all praying and supporting with from like we're all the church staff and all that stuff, but it's real.
Yeah.
Like it's real, and it's like, yeah, it's a big deal in the scriptures for sure.
Yeah. Our society and our culture has got a certain way of doing things. We like to explain it. We like science, and we like, whatever. And demon possession is one of those things where people look at each other like, is this happening?
Yeah.
Is this real? Is this possible?
I don't have a ton of experience with it, but I have enough experience with what I would even say is demonic possession
Right.
to absolutely believe
Yeah.
it's real, and to
100%.
and whether it manifests itself when some of those kind of classic, kind of crazy expressions, but there's all kinds of oppression in the life of Christian people.
that's more
that is
present,
demonic
yeah.
influence
Or-
that needs to be dealt with
Exactly.
from a spiritual warfare
Right.
perspective.
That's something I am probably more
Right,
aware of,
right.
and I sense it in a more present way in my everyday life. Every time we go to Uruguay, we feel that general, like,
Yeah.
the mood is different.
Yeah.
And there are certain things that you ought not to bring up or talk about, because you feel that sense of like a general spiritual oppression.
Right.
Yeah.
That it's not persecution, it's just a different vibe.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about it being more present in third world countries or places of greater poverty, of whatever else, almost as if Satan doesn't need that in North America. I'll just distract you with busyness, with success, with pornography,
Yeah.
with whatever else it is. And,
Yeah, we all have our
but
struggles,
we
for
see
sure.
how prevalent it is, specifically in the readings. As I was reading this week, I was like, man, there's a lot of demon possession.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is. Yeah,
Yeah.
there is. I think, one of the things that I think about in our world is there's that passage in Ephesians where Paul says, in your anger, do not sin, and do not let the sun go down in your anger, and don't give the devil a foothold.
Right.
right.
And, he's talking specifically about anger, but I think there's other sins that give the devil a foothold in our life and
Right.
create that moment of spiritual warfare, that kind of stronghold that, does need to be broken, whether we would call that possession and like casting something
or
out.
oppression, or like,
that-
Yeah.
that's my-
adversity.
I just know there are plenty of believers that have had those experiences, and I'm
Yeah.
quick to not discount them,
Absolutely
if that makes
not.
sense. Like,
Right.
I don't want to get into judging what's real or
Right,
what's not,
right,
but
right,
let
right.
it, let
That's
it be
not
what
a joke.
it is.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Absolutely. Anything else that was difficult for you as you read it? You were like, oh, man.
The one thing that I wrote down, it's not necessarily difficult to understand, but maybe difficult to apply, and it's perfect for our theme of the year of following Jesus, is just that cost of following Jesus when he says, whoever looks back
Right.
and, can't be my follower.
But let me do this.
Yeah, I've
No.
got to go bury the
Right,
dead.
right,
And we're like, well, of course he's got to go bury his dad, or
Yeah,
he's got to
right.
say goodbye to his. So
Like the cost of following Jesus is not driving a used car.
Right.
There's real cost. Yeah.
right, or living in a small apartment
Yeah,
in
right.
seminary.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's the basis for your famous quote.
What's that?
The cross
The
was
cross
no
was no
picnic.
The cross is no picnic either, yeah. Yeah, but people do want to know, how do I live that out? What does it really mean to pick up my cross daily or to shoulder that boat?
Yeah, how much sacrifice am I really giving?
Yeah.
We control our life in such a way that, you can even follow Jesus without really sacrificing too much. And
Right.
I just was confronted by that. Maybe I didn't question it, but was just really challenged by that.
Right,
So-
right. And it's kind of like it's calling us to a deeper type of following. It's not like this superficial like way that, okay, I can operate under these principles. But then he tells this Matthew 18 discipline passage and challenge you in so many different ways that is like, no, it's going to be deeper. And regardless of your context or whatever you're struggling with, it's going to get to the point where you're going to have to say, is this for real? Like, Jesus is calling me to do something. Either if it's leaving everything aside and following him for real, or if it's like doing what he's actually calling you to do in terms of like treating others a certain way. Or so with all of us, at some point it's gonna get to the point of where like, is this for real? And what the way I felt was like, it's a challenge to my faith. Do I really believe this? Because
It changes the way you live.
right, and the instructions are not hard. It's like
Right.
it's not like a math equation. It's like just do this. It's like
Yeah.
it's a
Love in
simple
my name,
Right,
care for
Love,
others,
yeah, right. So
Too often we end up with that, picking up our cross, and we end up looking at the people around us and judging against them.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it can become a performance matrix too. Like, oh, I'm suffering
Over here
more
carrying
than
my
you are.
cross.
Right,
Yeah,
right, right.
absolutely. Which is very Pharisaical.
Right,
Like, we've
right.
created a system where we've
100%.
decided that I'm suffering more than you are, so I must be closer to God. And that's also a caveat to it,
One of the things, I don't know, maybe it's less from the reading, but more just kind of an observation. Augusto, I don't know if you'd have any insight on this, but, I think in especially kind of modern evangelical Christianity, we've made following Jesus a lot about what I believe.
Yeah.
Like, we want to divide people up by, they fit in the right I believe boxes and they, check those
Yeah.
things. And this is in no way saying belief is unimportant.
Right.
But Jesus' emphasis is more on obedience in faith and action.
Right.
Yeah.
And so.
Good Samaritan again was in
Right.
this
Yeah.
passage this
Yeah.
week, right? Yeah, and you can see that. very clearly.
and the journey. I mean, there's like back in 2010, the Uruguayan soccer team did really well in the World Cup.
That's
You
a
got
long
to
time
bring that
ago.
up. You got to bring
Yes,
that
of
up.
time ago.
course. I mean, let's not talk about the Super Bowl.
On the eve of our pain? Great.
Let's not
okay,
talk
go
about
ahead.
Super Bowl. But the head coach made this concept famous. I mean, it's not like rocket science, but he said it in a way that the journey itself is the reward, because Uruguay didn't win the World Cup, but when they came after getting the 4th place, and it was a lot of controversy on the reffing, on the.
We don't know anything about that.
Right.
It's a little too soon for me
I
as a
know,
49ers fan to
I
say
don't
the
want to
journey is the
hit a
reward.
nerve. I don't want to hit a nerve.
But that's good. The
But-
journey is the reward.
The journey is the reward.
Uh-huh.
And then the entire country got behind that idea of like, oh, that's so powerful.
¿Cómo se
And
dice en español?
El camino es la recompensa.
Sí, I
El
love
camino
that.
es la
I love
recompensa.
that.
Yeah. So, and I think that's kind of the approach with Jesus. It's like, come and follow, come and see. This is, and we're gonna make mistakes in the process. It's gonna be messy, but that idea of keep moving forward, to quote Meet the Robinsons.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's Jesus's. I mean, that's the story of the Gospels. I
Right.
think that's part of the reason that like we resonate with watching The Chosen, because you're just like, what's going to happen? This
Yeah,
is
it's
being lived
real.
out in real time.
Right.
These disciples don't know what's coming. We know they don't know what's coming next because he keeps saying very clearly who he is and what's going to happen, and they're like,
what?
we don't understand. But I think we would be too.
Of course.
Hey, how do you connect some of the readings that we had this week to like your sermon, specifically on water into wine, which obviously doesn't appear in the readings this week,
Right.
but I see some stuff that leads up to it. And how did you process that?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that I tried to bring out in the water to wine story is just the taking something ordinary, making it extraordinary. And you see that when Jesus sends the disciples out to do miracles.
Yeah.
So I think, that theme runs throughout.
The disciples come back giddy from that.
Yes, I
Because we were able to do some miracles.
Yeah, and they were filled with joy, which
Yeah,
is what the other
absolutely.
thing we said that,
Yeah.
the water to wine, was just an outpouring of joy
Right.
kind of thing. So.
Yeah.
Any connections you saw between that message and what?
Well, I don't know if you guys know this, but every week I preach the same sermon in Spanish for our Spanish-speaking members. And one thing I mentioned is like, can you picture yourself being the one who's bringing the water?
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
picture yourself? It's like, I told them this agarrafón, this huge water
Yeah.
buckets that they have, and they're very popular in Mexico. It's like, can you picture yourself bringing a garrafón, and then when you get there, it's wine,
Yeah.
and you're like firsthand like witness
Watching
of
it.
watching it, and
Yeah.
then it's like that's just amazing.
Yeah. One of the things that and it's just another kind of question along the way, is that Jesus' first response to his mother is, "Woman, it's not my time.
not my time."
Yeah.
Like, I'm not supposed to be doing this yet." And in the readings
Lots
this
of
week,
this is
there
not
was
my
lots of
hour.
this, "Hey, it's not my hour, it's not my time. Hey, I'm waiting for it." And it's almost like Jesus had this very specific, thing that he's headed towards, but yet he interrupts that for his mother, and boom, kicks off his
Yeah.
entire ministry right then and
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's super interesting. Well, we're about out of time. I'm just wondering, one last thought, one word of encouragement, maybe for the church this week as we head into another week of Jesus.
Yeah, I could go first, so Augusto could go last on that.
Okay.
Give you the last word. Something that I just loved, it was actually in one of the more recent readings, was the famous story of Mary and Martha. And I guess that's my encouragement to myself and to anybody listening here today is, Martha scurries around, misses Jesus. Mary sits at his feet, chooses the best part, and is rewarded. I guess my encouragement to people would be to just keep sitting at Jesus' feet. Just keep choosing the best part. I know, actually, I fell behind a couple days on my reading this week, and so I had to double up, but it was great to do that, And so I guess I just want to encourage people to keep sitting at Jesus' feet and let his grace and truth and goodness wash over you, and as we follow him.
Well, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to give a shout out to Ian that is working like crazy. Thank you so much for taking my place this week. And you can follow the plan on the app. I don't know if you know this, but our app has the reading plan.
I listen to it every morning on my
So
walk. Yeah.
that's it. And you can even watch it in Spanish. Like you can choose the Spanish version, and you have all the passages for the day, and you have all the days.
And you can
That's
choose
well done.
any translation you want to listen to as long as it's ESV.
In English, you gotta listen to the ESV.
Well, you can read it in,
Yeah,
in
you can read it
NLT,
in other
NLT, NIV. But my word of encouragement would be like John 8. You'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And I think this whole follow theme for the year is like, let's know Jesus better. Let's try to get deeper into his presence and be with him and do what he told us to do and experience his presence. And yeah, I'm loving it. It's gonna be a great year. We're gonna grow as disciples because of this. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, my big takeaway kind of went along with yours, is that one of those readings, he talks about sending the 72 out on mission. And no matter how people responded, the message was still the same. The kingdom of heaven is near. The kingdom of God is near. And then this expert in religious law poses this question. And Jesus says to him, hey, if you don't show compassion, there's consequences for that. There's consequences for not responding to the message the right way. Right. In fact, there's consequences for not sitting at the feet of Jesus and taking it. And so this idea of pure belief has to be accomplished with this faith component that we see so clearly again and again and again. Sit at Jesus' feet, but don't just sit there and take notes.
Right.
Don't just sit there and write down your observations. You got to find ways to live it and realize that God is calling us to live that out daily, every day in our everyday circumstances. So,
Amen.
Yep.
Amen.
Hey, thanks for joining us again for this week's podcast. Thanks, Augusto, for joining us.
absolutely.
And we'll see you next week. Keep on following Jesus.